Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about moving around or navigating around data in Excel, and then talk about how that translates to a macro. Okay, so let's go full screen here. Make sure I'm not recording. I'm not recording. Okay, that's good. So to be able to move around, navigate data, I need data. So let's generate some made up data here. So I'm going to highlight my group here. I'm going to fill this down. I'm just going to let it go for a while. Okay, so I'm going to fill it a long ways. All right, so just move my mouse off the screen and fill down a long ways. About 1,200 data points there. Okay. Now, if I want to get back up to the top here, I can scroll. That gets me there eventually. And I've got a pretty fast scroll on this mouse here, or I can put my cursor in here and hold the up arrow. That'll get me there eventually. There's a couple ways I can actually do this very quickly. One, you can always grab the scroll bar over here and drag it up. There's a lot of ways I can get up here to the top very quickly. One of my favorites is if you hold down the control key on your keyboard. If I push control and down, notice what happens. And if I go control up, control plus an arrow key will move the cursor until it finds the end of your data or a hole in your data. If there's a hole in your data somewhere, if I just randomly delete a cell here, go control up. If I go control down, it'll find that hole, and I go control down one more time, it skips past it, and control down finds the bottom. Okay, so that's control plus an arrow key will go until you find a change in the data. And if there's no change in the data, it finds the end of the data. That works control up, control down. It will also work control left and control right. Let's see that here in a second. So let's say over here I go, this is equal to this times 2. We'll keep this simple, not 20 times 2. Now to fill this down like we did the first day, and again, because this is a formula, I don't have to give it 2 or 3 in the pattern. I can just fill this itself, and that'll generate the pattern. Now, I can do the same thing, just hold my cursor over here to the side or down below the screen and just wait. And notice what it does when it gets down to the bottom. It does something really cool. It didn't used to do this. Here it comes. And so it pauses just for a brief instant, and then it zooms past. It pauses long enough for you to release, but used to you'd zoom past, then you'd have to zoom back up, then you'd have to zoom back. You'd kind of feather it, and eventually you would get there. And you had to be kind of paying attention. Now it will actually pause for a brief instant for you, which is really nice. Now, if so that's kind of nice. Right? I can go put my cursor in here and control up, goes back up. But there's actually a little simpler way to do this. I'm going to undo here. That's control Z on the keyboard. That undoes there. Instead of clicking and dragging to fill, if you'll just double click, that's called autofill. You can actually record yourself doing that. That translates well to a macro. And that will fill the data that you're filling there. It'll fill it even to the column on your left. And if there's a hole, it'll fill it to the hole. But anyway, kind of a nice, simple thing to do there. Excuse me. Now, let's do one more column here. Let's say this is equal to, nope, not equal. This is equal to this plus that. Enter. And then again, let's just autofill. We'll double click that down. Okay. So now that I've got some data that I can navigate, again, control plus the arrow keys will allow you to quickly zoom from one corner to the next. If you hold control and you hit down or to the right too many times, you'll end up out here in like row 1 million and column 1 million. There's a couple ways you can get back. The easiest way is just hold down control and push up and to the left until you actually get back. You'll eventually find something. Another thing you can do, if I've got a cursor over here, you can actually go in this cell right, or this blank right up here and say, well, take me back to A1, and that'll put me there. Okay, so that's using the control key. Right? That's holding down the control and use the arrows to move quickly through your data. Now let's talk about the shift key real quick. If you've never done this before, in most Windows programs, if you hold down the shift key and use your arrows with the shift key engaged, that will allow you to control what's being highlighted. So you get a lot of control clicking and dragging with the mouse works just fine, but sometimes you just really need very specific small set of data, and it's faster once you get used to it. It's faster to just do that with the shift and arrow keys. If you combine both, if you hold down shift and control at the same time, you push shift control down and push shift control to the right, and notice the countdown here, that is 3,600 cells that contain something. 2 keystrokes, and I've got as big a data set as you possibly have available. You can select all of it very quickly. Okay, so again, control up, get back up to the top. Now, most of this translates just fine into a macro. In fact, that's kind of the next thing we want to look at is if I wanted to select, say, the bottom of a data set. That looks a little different depending on how I do it. Now, to us, it might look the same. So let's just show you here. So let's record a macro. We'll record, I'm going to call this one bottom 1. So I'm going to record bottom 1 here. And bottom 1, I'm going to start here in B3, the top of my first column there. I'm going to scroll down. And I'm going to get tired of scrolling, so I'm going to come over here and grab the scroll bar, and I'm going to drag that down. And then I'm going to click on this cell at the very bottom. For me, that's B1205. I'm going to stop recording. Now, let's do something else. Let me go back up to the top here. Control up. Now, let's record another macro. We'll call this one bottom 2. Bottom 2, I'm going to hit OK. And this one, I'm just going to hold down the control key, push the down arrow, and select the bottom. So in both cases, I'm going to stop recording there. In both cases, I've selected cell B1205, right? That should be pretty simple. But notice there's a difference between those 2 macros. This is bottom 2, see this one? And this is bottom 1. Oh, there we go. So this is bottom 1. Notice what it does. We start at the top, and then you scroll, and you scroll, and you scroll. You scroll a whole bunch. Sometimes it records some really interesting things sometimes. Right? So it recorded me scrolling all the way down to the bottom and then selecting cell B1205. And see this one? Selection, end, in the down direction. And that's the new selection. So selection, go down until you find something different, and then stop. To us, on the surface, in both cases, it looks like we selected cell B1205. And we did, but we told the computer 2 different things. Now, let's look at this. If I go, if I insert, and within your insert window, somewhere you should have shapes. Mine are right here. I don't know where yours are going to be. Any object you want to insert into your chart, into your Excel sheet, you can use as a button to where you can call to a macro real easy. I prefer the beveled rectangle here, this bevel here. That's my preference. That's not the frame, right? That's the frame. I like the bevel here. So if I click on that, it says, where do you want to draw it? So I'm just going to draw it in here. And when you draw a shape, normally in the right-click menu, you get a lot of options. One of those is edit text. I'm going to put in here bottom 1. Okay. And then I'm going to insert another one just like it. Insert shape. Let's grab the bevel again and highlight and edit text on that one just through right click, and that's bottom 2. And then any shape that you can insert in the right click menu, you're most likely going to have an assign macro button. You can do this to charts and graphs too. I'm going to assign the bottom 1 macro to that one, and I'm going to assign the bottom 2 macro to that one. Now I can call to these real easy. I don't have to shortcut key these at all. Hit the bottom 1, it scrolls down and selects that cell. I can go control back up. I can hit bottom 2 and it selects the bottom. Now let's say for whatever reason the size of our data changes. Right? So let's say somebody comes in here, and if you work with other people and they work with your spreadsheets, you'll learn very quickly they will do things you do not anticipate or intend them for them to do. So let's say somebody deletes a bunch of your data. Well, let's see what happens when I run bottom one. Watch what it does. It scrolls down and then it selects cell B1205 because that's what we told it to do, even though we didn't intentionally tell it to do that. We didn't say find the bottom. We said find cell B1205. If you want to find the bottom, no matter where it is, that's control down. That's a different command. And notice with the bottom two, I can put my cursor in column D and run that. It will find the bottom of wherever the cursor is, whatever selection is, it goes down. Okay, so two different commands, even though I recorded what appears to be the same thing. Okay, what else here? So that was record yourself selecting the bottom and record holding control down, and notice the difference. Two very different macros there. Okay, yes, paste special. Let's talk about paste special. So when we're talking about moving data around, paste special is a very powerful little tool here. So let's say that I dress up some cells here. So let's say I fill them with, I don't know, a red color or an orange color of some kind. Let's put some fancy borders in them and maybe a really nice outside border to set them off. So I got a group of cells here that are different than the others. And let's say I wanted to copy these guys. Let's say I come over here and I paste these. Right? And I'm just going to straight up Control V to paste. Notice what happens. What I'm hoping by pausing here while I take a drink is that you're trying to figure out why are these zeros, and hopefully you remember from the first lecture why these are zeros. It's because these are relative references. There's no dollar signs there. I didn't lock in those columns or anything. So it's pasting all of the formatting, the colors and the borders, plus it's also pasting add the cell to my left to two cells to the left. Maybe that's what you want. I don't know. Maybe it's not, but you have options. You don't have to just paste everything. If you copy that and you right click over here and you've got some options here, right? They now actually show you the different options that you can paste. But all of that is in this window, the paste special window, right? That you can try to get this, there we go. So you got this paste special window. And if you just want the value, the contents of the cell, but you don't want the formulas, you can just paste special values. And when you look at one of these, see, look, this one says the actual contents is 27. This is not referring to this cell. It's not looking at these cells. I can change this, and this does not change because these are what's called hard-coded values. These are just the numbers, not formulas, no references to anything else, okay? If that's what you want, and there will be a lot of times that it is what you want, and that works out very well. Maybe you don't want the contents of the cell. Maybe you just want the look of the cell. That's the formats. Maybe you want just the formulas. There's all kinds of options in that paste special window. One other thing to mention in the paste special options is, let's say I just want to do values, and let's say I want to transpose it. If I transpose it, just like a matrix in an algebra class, that's going to rotate that grid 90 degrees. So rows become columns and columns become rows. Okay. So paste special, very powerful tool. You record yourself doing that in a macro, that translates just fine. All those options end up in there, okay? All right, I'm gonna stop there. We'll make a third video and talk briefly about loops.